Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It has been a minute, but we're back at it today with a brand new video. I hope you are all doing well. It is great to see you again. What do you think of the new setup that I got going on here? For the past few days, I've just been looking into how I can set up these new lights that I got, and so far, I think it's working out well. I also decided that it would be a good idea to try and block out a little more of that natural light. So what I did is I just got a load of cardboard and sellotaped it together. At the moment, I'm just really hoping that it doesn't all fall down because I just taped it to the window. But I am super excited to get into today's video because I am going to be teaching you a few tips about how to make your B-roll smoother. These are techniques that I use personally when I'm out on a shoot, and I hope by informing you about them, you can also implement them in your own workflow. So moving on swiftly, let's get straight into it. Roll that intro. So when I first started thinking about how to get that funky, smooth, cinematic footage, when I first got into video, my mind just automatically went to things like sliders and gimbals. Now personally, I do own a DJI Ronin SC, and it is incredible for being able to get those super smooth, silky shots, but do I think that they are necessary in every situation? No. Personally, if I was on more of a professional shoot, I wouldn't go straight into handheld B-roll unless it helped develop the story, but most of the time I would bring the DJI SC with me. So what is it that you need to do when you're trying to get that smooth footage but don't want to use or don't have access to a gimbal? Number one, personally, I'd be thinking about points of contact. How many points of contact do I have with the camera? So number one, it's your hand on the body. The second point of contact I would make with my other hand, I'm placing that on the lens. So that's going to give you extra stability. But for that third point of contact, which I definitely recommend that you use, there are a few limiting techniques that I like to use myself to help negate a little more of that camera shake, which is, number one, I'm going to bring the camera closer to my torso, and I'm going to press that camera into my chest, because when I have the camera stretched out with my arms, I have extra joints that are going to be moving to add to the camera shake, so I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to press it into my chest, and when I want to do something like pan or tilt, I'm going to move my entire body. This helps limit any jitters or that natural camera shake that you get in hand. Now, of course, if it helps the story, like I mentioned earlier, to have a little bit of camera shake, like in an action-packed scene, of course, by all means, you won't need to implement these techniques, but of course, if you want to get super smooth footage, which is the topic of today's video, I personally find that these are extremely useful. Now, having said that, the second thing that you can do if you want to help stabilize your footage and you don't want to hold it into your chest is number two, get your camera strap. Where's my camera strap? You can get your camera strap to help limit the amount of movement with your arms stretched out. So make sure that you have tension on the camera strap, so that's going to help negate some of that extra motion that's going to be introduced. And whether you're panning or doing any kind of motion, the tension of that third point of contact, which is your strap, is going to help get rid of that movement. So you can get that incredible cinematic footage. Now that is all well and good to say until you come to the point of frame rate. Now, personally, of course, if you're filming A-roll like this, I would recommend that you use 24 frames per second. Some people use 30 frames per second. Personally, I use 24. But when you're shooting B-roll, I find that increasing that frame rate to 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second, which is basically just shooting in slow motion, that also works to your benefit, because all you have to do then is slow down the footage to about 40%, and then you've got your 24 frames per second, and that helps get rid of a lot of those jitters. And here are a few examples of recording in 24 frames per second versus recording in 60 frames per second and slowing it down to about 40%. As you can see straight off the bat, it looks much more smooth and can be exactly what you need to get what you're looking for. And so next up, I want to talk about focal distance. It is a natural thing when you're zooming in on a subject, you're going to introduce a lot more camera shake when you're filming, but what I would recommend is you can just zoom out, try and get as wide as possible, or just work in a wide angle in general, and then later on you can crop if you so wish. But the benefit of using a wider angle shot is that once you go into post-production, you can crop in and stabilize it a lot easier without getting any weird janky little movements in between. And so still, if you don't get that super smooth, buttery, beautiful, incredibleness that you're looking for, if you're using any professional software like Premiere Pro, or I'm currently using DaVinci Resolve, they do have built-in stabilizers which crops in a little bit into the video and stabilizes it so you can get much smoother shots, because since it's cut in that little bit extra, it can move the footage around to make it look much more cinematic and smooth and pretty and beautiful and all those wonderful things. So it is important to note that if you're investing in a good camera, you do not need a gimbal for every situation. I would definitely recommend that if you're on a professional shoot, yes, you can invest in one, but I don't think it's 100% necessary if you're doing it for personal videos, much like what I do myself. So to summarize, the point of contacts, which are the limiting techniques that you can use to help get rid of a lot of that excess unwanted movement. The frame rate, which means you're going to be working at a higher frame rate, like 60 or 120 if your camera allows it, and then slowing that down to 40%. And focal distance, so shooting wider, cropping in later, or shooting wider and being able to stabilize that much more easily. Thank you guys so much for watching. It is incredible to be back again. I'm so happy that I can make more videos for you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, just shoot me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me, and I'll see you in the next one.